Hello, hi, my name is Sami Atabani. I'm an IP and technology licensing expert with extensive experience in closed and open source licensing. A bit of background about myself before I start talking about the topic of today. I did a physics with electronics degree and then moved on to do a master's in microelectronics before I joined ARM as a microprocessor design engineer in the mid-1990s. I then went on to do IP licensing for the commercial team within ARM, covering Asia Pac and ensuring the adoption of the ARM technology with major partners in the Asia Pac region. Today I would like to talk about the insight into general IP licensing and how my involvement started with open source licensing. I found IP licensing a very exciting field, as one really needs to understand the flow of the IP across the supply chain and how the technology evolves and is used across the supply chain itself. And obviously, you also need to understand how it will evolve over time. One of the key principles to successful adoption of any technology is to make it possible for innovation to evolve and to enable the necessary licensing rights and for any underlying IP beneath such technology. This really requires a very good understanding of how the technology is used and is transferred across the supply chain, and entities across the supply chain need to use the technology enabled to ensure the innovation happens. But of course, that also they will all need to fulfill any obligations imposed by the IP owner, such as monetary reward or legal obligations on restriction how to use that technology. My personal involvement with open source technology started in the late 2000s when I was responsible for the software licensing team within ARM, dealing with partners and negotiating lengthy contracts with customers who wanted to use the commercial software that we were offering. Of course, software, certainly since the mid-1990s, always incorporated open source technology. And what this meant is that the terms and conditions covering such technology were not necessarily covered by the terms and conditions of your own IP or the ARM own IP that was licensed to customers. And customers quite rightly wanted to understand what terms apply and what are their legal obligations and how the open source components will interact with their own technology that they're developing and creating their own products. It is for this reason companies like ARM recognize that there is a need to develop a mechanism by which the companies such as ARM recognize that there is a need to manage the use of the open source component and any other proprietary IP within its products, because customers will need to understand what the rights they have and what licensing obligations they need. And I was appointed as the head of the group who was responsible at harmonizing how engineers and developers can bring in open source technology and incorporate that into ARM products and manage that. And the way we've done that is by simply starting by documenting the policy and the process and harmonizing across the company, training the engineers. At that time there were about 3,000 to 4,000 engineers roughly. They all needed to understand why we're actually trying to have consistency in how we manage open source that is used within our products, because obviously it facilitated negotiations with our own customers. And And during that time, I started to look outside of ARM, attending external conferences to see what is available in terms of tooling and in terms of infrastructure that a company can use to manage open source, and to understand how license management is done. Attending conferences such as the Open Source Summit organized by the Linux Foundation, and interestingly, a lot of the networking events resulted in discussions and side chats with other colleagues and counterparts in other companies, sort of realizing that we all had the same struggles. And as a result, we started to sort of chat around whether we can actually establish a standard way of managing open source across the supply chain, to almost regulate how a company can transfer its technology that incorporates open source to another entity. But there was nothing out there, and we tried to sort of discuss whether we could agree on perhaps setting up such a standard, and this is how the Open Chain project was born. It turned out to be a fantastic collaborative project, because it meant that companies and individuals who were working for different companies can share their valuable experiences in a very collaborative manner. This is really, and a demonstrator of that was when ARM agreed to donate all of its training material into the Open Chain project, and other companies followed suit. It meant that there was a sharing of that knowledge and that information, across the supply chain. And it was a great experience, because it resulted in the Open Chain standard itself becoming an ISO standard, offering consistency not just within a single company, but actually across the industry as a whole. I absolutely love the collaborative approach. It really provides a significant diversity with sort of collaborating, working with individuals from around the world, bringing significant experience and expertise to align in managing open source. And of course, that also resulted in me personally getting involved with many other initiatives and other organizations such as Open UK. Thank you.